We done. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another thesis defense over here at the graduate program in translation. My name is Gabriel Rodríguez. Today we have Marirosa Rivera's thesis defense, and with us at the same time, I want to thank them for being here. We got the two of the readers for this project are Robert Dupey from the English program over at the university, and we also have Alejandro Álvarez, which is also another colleague from us here in in-house translation. Like I said, Marirosa Rivera is our student for today's thesis defense. She has a very interesting project in her hands that we really want to share with you. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the baton to Marirosa, who's going to let you know all about her project and what it is about and what she did. So Marirosa.
So good afternoon. Thank you. As you said, my name is Marirosa Rivera. And before I start, I also want to express my gratitude to the professors here for accepting to be part of the committee. And I want to shout out to everyone watching just in case. I'm going to be presenting my thesis, Puerto Rican Idioms, a translation of Lydia Cruz de Rivera's thesis titled Modismos Puertorriqueños. So here's an overview of what the topics that I will be discussing during this presentation. First, I will provide a brief contextual background for the introduction and talk a little bit about the nature of the source text. Then I will move on to the methodology for translating idioms, as well as the challenges that I was faced with, such as culture-specific ones and ethical ones, as well as some obstacles that were presented related to language evolution, and then I will close with some final remarks. So without further ado, whenever we talk about a translation, we first have to talk about the source text. So the source text is a thesis written by my grandmother, Lydia Cruz de Rivera, when she graduated from the Hispanic Studies graduate program in 1950 at the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras campus. I was always growing up, I would always hear her say so many colorful expressions and wondered how she knew so many. Now I know it was because of her thesis. Her personal copy of her thesis was lost, but thanks to the university's online repository, I was able to find the digital version. And so it was 72 years later that I was able to read her work for the first time. And 76 years later, I am continuing her work here. So this is my grandmother, the woman in this picture. And in the top right corner are two pictures of library cards, which I wanted to share with you guys, which depict all of the people that went to the UPRS library to check out her thesis. And so that was the part that made me most emotional, like just the fact that her words were not just gathering dust and they were actually being read by other people. And so, as I've already mentioned, the source text is a thesis, so it follows the format of an academic text. It has a prologue, it has 3 chapters. Then we get to the part where it has the Puerto Rican idioms that she collected, and then she ends her text with the conclusions and then appendix. So the thesis, as a brief summary, follows the format and structure of an academic text. In it, she exposed the lack of recognition of the value of idiomatic expression and aimed to highlight the importance of these idioms, not only in language, but in the culture as well. And she focused solely on idioms originating from Puerto Rico. During all her research, she was able to collect 171 Puerto Rican idioms. Now, my main objectives for this translation was to create a reliable guide in English for each and every one of these 171 Puerto Rican idioms, which brings me to the methodology for translating them. So the difficulty in translating idioms lies in the fact that they are considered a type of figure of speech or figurative language and may not always have a direct equivalent. And so the challenge was, how can idioms be translated if there is no direct equivalence? This is one of the first questions I had when I began researching how to translate them. Idioms are innately deeply rooted in a community, and so they may contain specific cultural references to that community in a certain amount of a specific moment in time. So how could I replicate that in the target text? Through my research, I found that many translators seem to rely on Mona Baker. In her text, In Other Words, a First Book on Translation, she states that idioms and fixed expressions which contain culture-specific items are not necessarily untranslatable. It is not the specific items an expression contains, but rather the meaning it conveys and its association with culture-specific context, which can make it untranslatable or difficult to translate. So great, now I have confirmation that translating idioms was not impossible, but it wasn't going to be easy either. Who would have thought? Before going to specific examples of these cultural challenges, I first must talk about some changes that I was forced to make due to the fact that the source text was written manually via typewriter in 1950. And so these changes were in format, structure, and style, and they were made keeping the target audience in mind. One of the first changes was the author in the source text listed the 171 Puerto Rican idioms with their definition. And so it looked a little bit like this, right? Imagine this 171 times. But since I decided for my translation to include the Spanish idiom, the idiom in Spanish, the literal translation, the definition, and the close equivalent, I decided to change the format to a table so that I could display the information in an organized manner. And so it would look more of it like this. Imagine this 171 times. These changes, because I changed it to a table that occupied more space in the pages, and so it resulted in an increased number of pages compared to the source text, but I made sure to always keep the numbering the same as it helps when referencing the source text. Another one of the changes had to do with the author's poetic or metaphoric style that she employed in her writing, which I tried my best to replicate in my translation. For example, nuestros modismos muchas veces esposan perfiles de nuestra personalidad como pueblo. In this case, for my translation, I opted to use a metaphor that's still related to an artistic medium so that it would be more or less the same. Since esbozar means to sketch or draw, I decided paint a picture more or less translates the same. Idioms often paint a picture of the community's personality. Next, the author wrote in the third person plural and used the present tense throughout her thesis. Y lo cierto es que nuestro ambiente está saturado de esas frases de origen extranjero para las que ya hemos dado sabor puertorriqueño y que usamos con mucha frecuencia en nuestra vida diaria. However, in this case, I decided not to replicate this in my translation because I did not want to exclude some of her readers. Given that her audience, the source audience, was probably Puerto Rican people, I imagined that she wanted to include them in her text. But I recognize that my audience may not be the same. And so because I did not want to exclude them, I opted then to change the person, number, and tense, and resulted in, that is, Puerto Rico is saturated with these phrases of foreign origin to which the people have already given that Puerto Rican twist and use often in their everyday life. Next, I also took some liberties in it that I decided to include all the equivalents I could find, and I added and organized this in the table similar way to a dictionary would. So for example, in this case, darle de arroz y masa, which is to defeat or to beat in an overwhelming way, I decided to include different senses or different connotations because I recognize that they can, depending on the context, they can be used for different situations. So it could be letter A, to win by a landslide, as in to win in a competition, or letter B, to beat the living daylights out of someone, as in give a physical beating. And so there were many of these idioms could be used in different contexts. That's why they're so unique and awesome to use. But I decided then to include like all of the close equivalents I could find. So this is also why I had my target text turned out to be longer than the source text. Now that we talked about these format and structure changes, we can get back to the main challenges, which were the culture-specific challenges. So to reiterate, my main objective is to create a bilingual Spanish-English compilation of the 171 Puerto Rican idioms that she collected in the source text. We have to remember that idiomatic expressions are unique to the source culture, meaning that these idioms are representation of the Puerto Rican people, their thoughts, their stereotypes, their prejudices, everything. And so these specific cultural references limit the possibility of finding a close equivalent in the target text. As outside of these idiomatic expressions, I wanted to discuss some specific word choices and my translation process behind it. First, we have Hyberia, which means to be skilled or astute. She used it when she said, nuestro pueblo ha creado maravillosas expresiones que nos revelan su agudeza, su jaibería y a la vez su candidez. I'm well aware that I could have just left it as ingenuity, but I wanted to showcase the Puerto Rican culture, and so I opted to leave it in Spanish while adding ingenuity after. The Puerto Rican people have created wonderful expressions that reveal their wit, their jaibería or ingenuity, and at the same time, their candor. So this is just a classic case of amplification in which I added additional information as clarification for the target audience. Next, we have Hispanoamerica. Some people may translate it as Hispanic America or Latin America, even though neither option is entirely accurate, since they either include or exclude some countries that speak Spanish or don't speak Spanish as a first language. The author wrote about Hispanoamerica to refer to countries from America that speak the Spanish language outside of Mexico, Spain, Venezuela, Chile, which she also mentioned. For example, otras las tomamos de algunos países hispanoamericanos y una gran parte son producto de la agudeza y del ingenio puertorriqueños. For this translation, I decided to use the term Spanish-speaking countries. And for these cases that she wanted to talk about countries that speak Spanish that were outside of Mexico, Spain, Venezuela, and Chile. So for example, others are adopted from Spanish-speaking countries, though the majority are the product of Puerto Rican wit and ingenuity. And finally, we have the word guiso, which is particularly tricky for me to translate because I felt that there was no translation accurate enough. She closes one of the first chapters with a quote from Herrero Mayor that says, el modismo es al idioma lo que la sal es al guiso, sazona, da sabor y añade regusto. So tu guisar means to saute certain ingredients with water or oil to produce a type of seasoning base or sauce, which is then the foundation for a myriad of different dishes depending on the end product, right? So here we would like put oil in the pan, add sofrito, add salsa de tomate or tomato paste. And then we would let that like simmer in a little bit, and then we would either add a lot of water or a few water and vegetables or starches, right, to produce either stock or caldo or a bunch of different things. But I did not feel that any of these was accurate enough. And so I decided to keep looking at the quote for the millionth time, and I focus on the word sal. So, and then I thought, well, usually salt to do its purpose to be effective, right? And seasoning and enhancing flavor. That means that something must have already been created in order for salt to be effective, right? So because of this, I eliminated the seasoning paste or sauce, which is usually only in the beginning. And so I opted to use the idiom is the language, what salt is to guiso stew. It seasons, adds flavor, and enhances. Because I figured that here, the author maybe was not talking about something that is at the beginning, but rather something that little something else that you add, oh, it needs like a little bit of salt, like a little bit more flavor for something that was already there. So other than these cultural challenges, I mentioned that I also came across some ethical concerns. Idioms, again, are a representation of a community. So they present these cultural aspects such as religious beliefs or different societal ideologies, which complicate the translation. For example, so for colloquialisms and profanity, I wanted to be clear first in saying that the author did not include any profanity at all in her source text, but because idioms are first and foremost colloquial expressions, I opted to include some profanity as a way to provide some close equivalents of different and varied registers. For example, in the same example from before, darle arroz y masa, you could say to beat the daylights out of someone or to beat the hell out of someone, right? Meterse a uno al oro sin saber dar la pata, we could say to talk through one's hat or to talk out of one's ass. So I figured depending on like who your community is surrounding, you would say either or. There are also some idioms that may present some derogatory tones or racist tendencies. Again, they're idioms representation of the community. So that is to say, maybe these were the tendencies back in 1950. So we have like ser de la clase or tener una subraja, which have to do right, with being Black or having Black ancestry. Or we also have no salvar uno ni al médico chino, which is like a lost cause, like to be out of options. So maybe these were the tendencies back then, and that's why they were so used to collect these 171 idioms. The author resorted to looking at the press. She consulted different people of different parts of the island. And so clearly these were some idioms that were generally known throughout the whole island. And so that's why they came to be there. However, just because that maybe that was the way of thinking back then doesn't mean that is the way of thinking now. As we all know, time goes on, time changes, and with change comes also language evolution. So it is important to note that language is no stranger to evolving with the times, and idioms are no exception. Some idioms that I found were either no longer used, had changed in meaning, had been shortened, or referred to outdated concepts. I also included some translator's notes to provide some cultural context for the target audience whenever the idioms reference something that is not so generally known. For example, in these first cases, I added some connotations. Estarle pichando a uno in 1950, it would be to flatter with a self-interested purpose or to suck up to someone. However, now I think it would be used more or less the opposite way. It would be more like to ignore someone or to not pay attention to a situation. So we would say to brush someone off or to blow something off. Same as te estoy dejando. Back then it would be to give someone a last chance, and maybe we can say that still now, como te estoy dejando, like cuidado. But we would also say it to break up with someone, as in I'm dumping you. We also have some cases of cultural context. So this are some examples of the notes I added. We have bailar una duco pintura, and for the little translation, I put to scratch someone's duco paint, and then I added the fact that duco is a paint brand from Puerto Rico that was founded in 1920. We also have ponerse bico a bico con uno, literal translation to be beak with someone, as in the beaks of hens and roosters, which refer to Puerto Rico's cockfights that have been illegal since 2019. So these are just some examples. There are many more because as I've said before, idioms often refer to the culture. So because I did not want to exclude the target audience, I decided that these extra tidbits would help them to understand more the references in the culture behind these idioms. Now, these are some idioms that were almost the same between the literal translation and the close equivalents, like to not even make it to first base or to put someone in their place. The close equivalents stayed the same. And then the other two examples, there's only a difference of one word. To be a sack of bones, to be a bag of bones, or to spread like purslane, to spread like a weed or like wildfire. And finally, this last one was one of the few cases that I was not able to find a close equivalent because of the dated reference. Apparently, estar uno pasado meant to have tuberculosis. Right now, I don't think that this is as relevant, and so I proposed my own little translation and then my own definition as used to describe someone who is bold, presumptuously, or overly familiar in the cases that we would say like, estás pasado, like te guillaste, then that way it would be like to cross a line or to go too far. And so now that we reached the end, I wanted to share some last thoughts with you. My grandmother expressed the need for an extensive analysis of idioms that can serve as a basis for future research. And so I am extremely proud that she set out to be one of the first people to study exclusively Puerto Rican idioms and emphasize their value. She, in her thesis, of course, she researched about other authors, and she did find that other authors researched idioms, but not as a highly valued linguistics element in language. And of course, they did not focus on Puerto Rican idioms, rather they focused on ones that originated from Spain. And so as her grandmother, I am honored to continue her legacy and keep researching and learning about Puerto Rican idioms. In regards to my future, a common next step is to publish. As of now, I'm not sure yet if I will. I am, however, interested in modernizing these Puerto Rican idioms, so also adding new ones that have formed part of everyday speech during the last few years, and of course, translating these as well. And so we've made it to the end. Again, I want to thank the community, the committee, and to everyone watching.
All right. Thank you, Marirosa. I think this is the first time I've seen a thesis such as this, especially of a student continuing the legacy of a parent, and it's unique for a number of reasons, especially the subject of idioms. I teach them in my translation classes, but it's always under the scope of humor and comedy, because even though idioms today, I would say they have there's more writings about them, I still don't feel like they're taken seriously as other subjects. They are analyzed and in translation, but I don't think they're seen as something serious yet, linguistically speaking. And so, yeah, that's some 2 cents I got there. I want to pass it on to the committee now, the readers, who would like to begin with their comments, observations. Okay, Robert, you are muted, just in case.
Muy buenas tardes, distinguidos miembros del comité de Marirosa Rivera. It's an honor for me to be part of her committee. Marirosa, I'm so glad you reached this day. You had you played a very important part in our syntax course, and I'm very glad that you took me up on my offer to be on your committee. Y que para bien sea. And I feel that having read your work, first of all, I truly enjoyed the preface. I read it once to begin, right? And it made me, I felt right, as a reader, I truly felt right at home with it. Okay? And it was outstanding, and I read it again. And it deserves to be read even a third time to really appreciate what you've done here. As the professor said, this is not just any document that you chose to translate a chapter from this author or that author. It's your family and an academic and from Estudio Hispánico. And that, as a linguist with me, touches home. And it also reinforces my belief that idiomatic expressions are important. Just like in English, we have the phrasal verbs are important in English. It's hard to speak English without using phrasal verbs.
Yeah.
You know what that is? I'm going to pick you up. Spanish doesn't have any phrasal verb. te voy a ir a buscar, te voy a recoger. Spanish just has the synthetic verb. But in the Puerto Rican culture and the Puerto Rican dialect of Spanish variety, we have all these idioms. And as a citizen of Puerto Rico since I was 18 years old, I've lived here. So I really have come to appreciate what your grandmother did. And I'm also a product of the PGL, Programa Graduado de Lingüística, my master's. So as a linguist, I see three things here, three important points. Idiomatic expressions bring together syntax, lexicography, and semantics. Syntax, because you have to put the expression together. You analyze it. So you say, está pasado, pues. Viene del verbo pasar. You can construct. It's a construction. Then you have lexicography. You have the meaning, and then semantics, and then all of these things that are so important. So what your work points out is that Puerto Rican idioms or idiomatic expressions are certainly not to be taken lightly. They're important, and they're used, and they evolve. And so I really appreciate the work you've done, particularly in the preface. I went through it. I made little notes, parts that I liked. I put a little heart next to them. On the very first page, you said, and I quote, she earned her master's degree. This was the first time I was reading it. Master's degree at the Hispanic Studies graduate program in 1950. Due to mysterious circumstances, my grandmother's personal copy. And then I put a heart next to that. I thought that was really, you touched base with, your reader. Your reader is going to want to continue to see what the final product is. Whether that reader is a native Puerto Rican from another Hispanic-speaking country or from a third country. So the preface really sets the stage for a wonderful piece of work that you've done. I do have a couple of, I'm going to go here like page by page to see in my notes. Okay. I'm going to the translation part now, I think. Okay. No, ese es el prólogo. Okay, introduction. Chapter 1. Okay. I guess I'll just go to the questions. Una gran parte. Okay. No, I'm on the wrong. Let me switch here. I'm sorry. Chapter.
Do you want Alejandro to chime in while you find it, Robert?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Está muted here, Alejandro, just in case.
Okay, so Marirosa, hi. I'm glad that you actually made it to this stage of your master's career. I've had you in my classroom, even though it's in Spanish classes, but I know the quality of your work. I have to agree that I really liked your preface. And I'm a sucker for this kind of text because I really like this type of refraneros, collections of idioms. I've always liked them since I was actually a child. So it's actually, so you're hitting me where I want, where I like it, where I like it. So I'll have comments on some. Mostly my comments will be on your on the other part in the list of idioms. But regarding the preface, the only thing that I don't agree with is with your concept of Hispanoamerica.
Okay.
because it's not just a Spanish-speaking country. I mean, Ghana speaks Spanish. I mean, Ghana no, Guinea Equatorial, they speak Spanish there. Hispanoamérica does not exclude Spain. Okay, so I will write like something like Spanish-speaking countries in the Americas.
Okay.
That'll be, you know, what Hispanoamerica really is. It's a country in the Americas where Spanish is either spoken thoroughly or it is a unofficial language there. And the way you wrote it, which is Spanish-speaking countries, well, it could be a little misleading in that sense. I know what you meant, and I know you mean good, but the way it is, and you know, refer to the countries of America that speak the Spanish language. But America is the U.S. in English. I remember this is one of the first lessons I learned from Andrew Hurley when I was his students, is the difference between America and the Americas. To the extent that there's also a common mistake in Spanish. En Spanish, the Americas es América. Así que no hay razón por poner las Américas en ningún lado, porque América es, you know, it's understood in Spanish as the three, you know, the three continents. However, in English, being the case that without not a good explanation, America means the U.S. And that's how it has taste in American English. You have to divide the Americas and specify, you know, French speaking, French America. Anyway, it's the only thing that I would suggest you change in your preface.
Okay.
So, I really love. I like the interest that from the author. I like the way. I like the way she phrases her methodology. I believe it was a daring work of this was approved in 1950. It must also be said that she was a student of one of the most classic and well-known linguists in Puerto Rico, which is Robert Rosario, whose book I have, La Lengua de Puerto Rico. I have it somewhere around my library. So I mean, I'm glad you want to publish it, because it really does merit publication, especially, for example, if you look at the success of Maya Sherwood with Bad Bunny's language, list, glossary. So I believe it would fit well within that type of publication. So I'm gonna stay there, because then I have a few observations on the idioms themselves. First of all, because sometimes the literal translation could be misleading, and also to suggest you that some of them also have also acquired current meanings that are not there, and you have. And I believe it is my opinion that you might want to include them. Just to give you an example before we go on, you have to be very careful talking about somebody reaching first base, because in English, it could also be referring to or alluding to a sexual encounter. You know, you reach the basis depends on how far you go with a sexual partner, and that's not what the phrase in Spanish means. Ni llegar a primera base. So that's one of the. So that type of comment that this is the kind of comment that will be, giving you in a while. So yeah. But it's a very good. Perdona, it's a very good work. I really liked. I mean, I'm sorry. In general, it's the bad thing about defenses, Marirosa, is that we always the things that we have to suggest or make you review are much less than the quality of your work, because we usually don't go like word for word mentioning what we like. I'm sorry, that's the nature of defenses, but I would like to say that this is a very good job. It's well researched. It's well written, and I really enjoyed reading this. To the sense that I will help you later. I have some sources here to suggest to you later. I might get in trouble actually for mentioning that I have this at home, but I don't care. So yeah, that's it for now. Yeah.
Someone's been taking books from the PGT repository, I guess.
It's not a book, it's a binder. Okay, so
Go back to Robert. Robert?
Hey, I don't know if I should give these suggestions now or maybe,
Yeah, go ahead. You
maybe
go
a,
ahead. Let's start. Yeah.
a couple.
Yeah.
Okay, Marirosa, and the start of chapter 2, the original text says in Spanish, segundo párrafo, el lingüista Ramón Caballero y Rubio desde muy joven se dio a la tarea de, etcétera, etcétera. In English, you have in the text, since youth. I'm wondering if you should put in since his youth or since a certain age, but you have since youth.
Mhm.
No sé. I'm just
Yes,
uh,
I agree. Since he was very young, since he was a child, yeah, yeah.
eso es, pues nada, son cositas, ¿verdad? I'm gonna go quickly here. Not sure about this. I'm just curious. I've heard no saca los pies del plato. Entonces, he doesn't take one's feet off the plate. I like the way you use the literal translation, but then you have the definition to change one's behavior and condition in a more expansive and liberal sense. Como que I had not previously understood it like that, but I don't know. I've heard on like politicians say, es que este gobierno no saca los pies del plato. Like they don't get started. I don't know. No sé. How,
Yeah, I also many of the idioms they're old. So I also learned about new senses of the idioms that I guess that's how they were used back then. So
okay.
that's why I tried my best to modernize them, but again, this is only a translation.
No.
Um
Exactly. I've heard that on the radio en los programas de análisis político. Que no saca los pies del plato, como que. And I used that with one of my colleagues once in the department, and the person did not know what I was referring to, and the person is Puerto Rican. O sea, yo lo entendía así como que no arranca, no acaba de arrancar.
It's her
Oh,
grandmother
got
at
it.
the end of the thesis left a glossary with the meanings that she worked based upon, but during that transcripts that we worked, Marirosa and I did read some that we didn't agree on the meaning because it's not how we have grown up to see them. So we worked as closely with the text because we thought, okay, so it's her grandmother's work, is where she's working, this is the meaning she's giving them. But we agree that there are some changes and there are some different interpretations of certain idioms that we don't know if it's something about time, if it was her grandmother, the surroundings of her grandmother. We're not sure about what was it.
Yeah, but at least when I was researching the idioms, I also consulted a lot Tesoro Lexicográfico del Español de Puerto Rico. And many of the idioms had the definitions that she provided.
And many didn't
As
too.
one of the, yeah.
And some didn't.
And other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some didn't. Yeah.
One other very little point here, Marirosa, on page donde termina tu abuela, el último párrafo dice, veamos las obras que en parte, I'm in chapter 2, discuten el modismo, etc. That last paragraph says, de nuestra sociedad, no, el autor tiene un concepto totalmente erróneo del modismo, dice Marswatch. In the English, you have, the author has a complete erroneous concept. I'm just wondering, it should be completely, correct? No sé, completely. O sea, un adverbio ahí.
It's modifying an adjective, so it has to be an adverb, yeah.
Very minor point, okay? Moving on very quickly. Let's see. I think I laughed with some of these expressions. Because el que me busca me encuentra. If you look for me, you'll find me. So it says, phrase used to indicate that when there are repeated motives for something, one should not be surprised of the outcome commonly used. Como que me quedé igual. I don't know. As an English speaker, also, el que me busca me encuentra. As my being bilingual, I guess I can interpret it like I'm available. I don't know.
No, es como que if you ask for it, you're gonna get it. It's a
trouble,
threat.
yeah.
It's a threat.
Yeah.
If you
And, like,
if
if
you
you're
ask for
looking-
it, you're gonna get it. That's what
We
I'm
Yeah,
still
saying.
use we still
similar-
use that one though. We still use that one. That's
Yeah.
still around.
I think it's similar to like if you look for trouble, you're gonna find it like
Yeah, uh-huh.
Otherwise, I'm not gonna. The rest of it is just minor. Pero it was a pleasure to do the reading. I didn't have to go over, and mostly, it was really, I really and truly, as a linguist, as a professor, as a fellow colleague of all of you in translation, I really enjoyed being on this committee. And I'm going to say this sincerely. I feel that I'm a better person, better informed for having been on this committee. So, and I thank you.
thank you. Thank you, and I look forward to reading all your notes.
Sí. So I agree with Professor Dupey. So what the questions I have now, I really and you're very specific in your preface. So I'm gonna take your word for that. I'm not judging the definitions of the author because, of course, as you have well said, they're dated, and it's her impression of her investigations, and therefore they are not your definitions or opinion. So when I started disagreeing with some of them, I realized, no, this is what the thesis says. So at some point you could get confused because you're not doing the linguist work, you're just translating it, so that's okay. So but I have a few, ¿verdad? For example, the idiom meter las cabras al corral, which is defined, ¿verdad? As to achieve or accomplish of something. That has changed. That doesn't mean that anymore. Meter las cabras is to put the fear into someone. Okay, por ejemplo, so my observation is, since you have done some annotations of changing meaning today, then do it with all of the idioms that require that clarification. So
I
just
want to.
but you can do that because, for example, ese de las cabras en el corral, pues, and again, this is not your definition, so this has nothing to do with you, okay? O sea, quiero que quede bien claro, pero quizás añadir ese, ¿verdad? Como este de present, ¿verdad? Hoy significa otra cosa. Que yo me acuerdo muy bien, lo usaba mucho. No me metas las cabras, ¿verdad? No vengas aquí a meterme miedo, no vengas aquí, ¿verdad? Incluso podría estar adquiriendo otro significado de tomar a alguien de tonto. Le estoy metiendo a alguien las cabras en el torno. Incluso está cambiando ahora mismo ese. Me perdí, espérate, ¿dónde está metido? Que sí, tengo que brincar, espérate. Es que como hay tablas en el prefacio, hombre.
Yeah, in
Okay.
at least in the appendix so in the appendix she has 50
Sí,
idioms that.
lo vi.
So
Entonces,
there is
mira,
like to embarrass or to humiliate, but yes,
sí, no, y
I
también
want to so bad to
sí,
modernize
put
these.
sí, y mira, y también I have some observations in your little translations of the idioms, porque yo sé que, ¿verdad? Hay que ponerlo, pero también hay veces que afinar un poquito, porque taparle uno la boca, it's more than covering one's mouth, it's shutting one's mouth, it's shutting somebody up. It's a strong word. Tanto que tiene el sustantivo tapaboca, le metió un tapaboca, ¿no? Y eso, to cover someone's mouth, it's kind of soft, como que no, se queda como que flojito, ¿verdad? También te tengo que observar, ¿verdad? En la página Eh, tener cría, que tú muy bien, se nota que tu investigación viene del verbo criar, de acuerdo. Pero tener cría, it's not to have offspring. Tener cría is to show your pedigree. When you're in trouble, in a difficult situation, tú sacas la cría, ¿no? Y sacar cría es to show your lineage, to show your pedigree, to show that you have what it takes in a difficult situation. Eso es tener cría. Por eso se usa mucho en el deporte. El boxeador estaba perdiendo y sacó cría. O sea, he didn't take a baby and show it. No, es que demostró su linaje como boxeador, ¿verdad? Y en esa que I would change that. No son muchas, tranquilas, que no son muchas, entonces, tampoco es para tanto. Eh, ok, los portes aquí. Esto está bien. Ok, sigo por ahí. Ok, no, sigo. Estoy buscando aquí. No estoy, por ejemplo, no estoy cuestionando la definición de la autora porque es lo que dice. Se lo estoy acá. Ok, botar a la pelota is not to throw away the ball, it's to hit the ball out of sight. O sea, porque to throw away is literally to take it and put it in a trash can. O sea, mi literal translation sería to hit the ball out of sight. Y claro, tu traducción es buenísima, que es to knock it out of the park, es spot on lo que significa, ¿no? Pero lo que estoy hablando es el literal translation, que a veces pues,
I
podría
know.
ser confuso,
I just wanted
¿verdad?
to be as literal as possible because I wanted there to be a really distinct difference between the little translation and the close equivalent.
Sí, pero to hit it out of sight es una traducción literal también, de botar la pelota. O sea, y botar también, o sea, nosotros, el uso de botar como echar o throw away es de Puerto Rico, porque botar realmente
Yeah.
botar lo que realmente significa es rebotar. To bounce, to do little hops, eso también es botar o rebotar de la pared, o sea, ¿verdad? Tú botas la pelota, la bola de baloncesto también la puedes botar, ¿no? O sea, contra el piso. O sea que sí, o sea, I need a literal translation, pero tampoco tan, word for word. O sea, que por ejemplo, hacerse el chivo loco, aquí te estoy sugiriendo un animal, ¿verdad? Porque chivo es el cabro, ¿no? Es el
Mhm.
macho de la cabra. Eh, pues ahí tú puedes decir to play possum, por ejemplo, en vez de play dumb, pues play possum, ahí tienes un animal con animal, ¿ves? En tu close equivalent. También está el coger de oso que me encanta. Hay algunos que me encantan, coger de oso, coger de bingo, eso, porque claro, son más viejos que yo y dije, wow. Eh, Ahí puedes usar también, ese es el useful idiot, que es la persona que tú tomas de zángano para que haga algo por ti. O sea, es eso. Eh, Está el que corta, no es to be, que es lo pues, to be cutting,
Cutting, yeah.
es to be razor sharp. Es que estoy que corto, estoy bien afilo, soy peligroso, no te metas conmigo, ¿verdad? Que estoy que corto. Que también tú muy bien lo has, después más hablas, lo enmiendas y ahora también está el que corta, es estar súper preparado para lo que sea, tampoco ya no tiene tanto ese matiz de violencia que tenía antes, ¿no? Entonces, como mi abuelo picaba caña, el mocho que muy bien has investigado es el machete que ya no tiene filo, ¿verdad? Pero aún funciona.
Mhm.
Eh, pero también mocho, y yo sé que es lo que dice la autora, ¿verdad? Que es to scare the ¿verdad? Meter los mochos, claro, es amenazar con el machete, ¿no? Pero también hoy tiene otro significado que es to fool someone, porque meter el mocho es me estás atacando con un instrumento que no es afilado, o sea, me estás engañando. O sea, hoy también ha adquirido ese significado. Que lo que tienes que hacer es que si quieres, porque pues, ojo, no sé si me queda claro, estas son sugerencias, por si acaso. No, no, no. Sí, sí, si tengo un nicho te lo digo, esto lo tienes que corregir, pero voy con sugerencias. Así que meterlo mucho también es to try to fool someone, ¿verdad? Y hay refranes en inglés que tienen que ver, ¿verdad? De tomar, pull one's leg, pull
Ujú.
one's chain, tú también los has puesto ahí. Te advertí, ¿verdad? Lo de llegar a primera hay que tener cuidado porque no make it to first base, pues cuidado que en inglés adquiera una connotación sexual que en español no tiene, ¿verdad? Ten cuidado. Porque yo me recuerdo de estas series que hablaba, I got to get to first base es besar, to second base es ir un poquito más abajo, ajá, y no tengo que completar, ¿verdad? Pero tú me entiendes. Es pegar un vellón. Yo no sabía que pegar un vellón
Yo tampoco.
era eso.
Yo pensé que era molestar insistentemente siempre.
Eh, pero claro, es que tiene sentido porque pegar un bellón es darte un chavito para que hables, porque eres tan callado que te tengo que pagar para que hables. Y ahí dices, como una rocola, como una vitrola, que tú le echabas una moneda, un bellón y sonaba y salía sonido. Pues ahí tiene todo el sentido del mundo, pero hoy es, ¿verdad? Y claro, como te digo, no está en el purview de lo que tú tenías que hacer, o sea, lo tengo bien claro. Pero hoy eso ha cambiado a to mock someone, to make fun of someone, ¿verdad? Y otro que me volaba a la mente también, aparte de ser un cohete quemado, que hoy ha adquirido una connotación bien negativa, porque ya el cohete quemado, lamentablemente, ¿verdad? Hoy se refiere a una mujer que dice en el barrio, y me da vergüenza decirlo, ¿verdad? Pero cito, ¿verdad? Que entre comillas tiene mucho millaje, ¿verdad? Ha tenido muchos compañeros. Y yo lo aprendí así. Ser un cohete quemado es eso, ¿no? Tanto hombres como mujeres, ¿verdad? Porque hay hombres que también son cohetes quemados. A ver, y aguantar el gorro sí sale en el tesoro. eh, y aparte de que ser un freeloader, hay que añadir, bueno, si tú lo pones, to be a third wheel, o to be a chopper. Ay, no, eso lo tenías bien. Era otro. Entonces, ahí este es bien difícil. El que no tiene dinga tiene mandinga. I don't- yo no creo que haya un idiom y no es por culpa de falta de expresión, es que nuestra cultura acá, de la forma en que se dio la raza, ¿verdad? Las relaciones raciales, es muy distinta. Y créeme que acabo de presentar un paper afuera de esto, ¿verdad? De que los problemas de traducción de términos raciales, la raíz principal es que en Estados Unidos la cuestión racial se dio de una dinámica muy distinta a nuestra forma en que se dio. Es que la ambas fue buenísima, pero fue la forma en que cobraron vida fueron muy distintas y por lo tanto las terminologías, ¿verdad? No necesariamente son buenas soluciones y son directas. Así que, pero yo no sé si sea passing el one drop rule. Yo no sé, hay que buscar otra solución. No sé, y yo creo que es de estos casos en que simplemente, como en inglés no ocurrió esto, ¿verdad? O sea, yo no puedes hablar, you can't talk about Americans and say everybody here has a drop of African blood. O sea, it's absurd, you know, por las cuestiones raciales allá y multiculturales. Quizás acá simplemente it's okay to say that there's actually no translation. It's just, es decir, como que everybody in Puerto Rico, everybody here has some African blood, even, y ya, tú sabes, sea visible o no, pero realmente no me atrevería a traducirlo porque este es de estos casos que es tan específico culturalmente que... Otro que me voló la mente es echarle a uno un fufu, pues yo lo aprendí como algo bien negativo. O sea, ¿verdad? Más que hex, actually, you can actually put a curse on someone con un fufu. Ese me pareció bien interesante. Entonces, te sugiero para darle derecha a algo es to dodge a bullet, to dodge a
Ujú.
bullet. Es algo bien, y es otro idioma que lo recoge, ¿verdad? Porque darle derecha a algo es to evade a situation, to avoid danger. Y entonces, pues, to dodge the bullet, ¿verdad? Eso está chévere. Eh, Tener la vuelta de lo viejo, eso no lo he escuchado nunca. Es interesantísimo también. Eh, es que me gusta mucho el texto, sé que te estoy aquí dando sugerencias, ¿verdad? Porque como uno como que le da cariño cuando le gusta leer algo, no sé. Ser de clavo pasado, también es otro refrán que me sorprendió que ha cambiado de significado. Porque aquí también, quizás por la política, es que ahora se está usando más política, ¿verdad? Yo soy PNP de clavo pasado o popular de clavo pasado, ¿verdad? Y también puede ser, ser de clavo pasado, could actually be a bona fide party member, ¿verdad? Eso también puede ser un significado que sugiero que añadas al que ya tienes, que está muy bien. Ya estoy acabando, tranquila. Eh, y estar uno en trinquete. O hay una frase que, pero quizás aplica más a los hombres, though, que es to look sharp. You look sharp, ¿verdad? Y la frase que yo escuché en español no era sino de estar de punta en blanco, ¿verdad? Estar inmaculado, estar súper bien vestido, ¿verdad? Eso sería lo que significa. Y esto de como puerco para el agua fregado también me voló la mente. Y ver que tú has hecho la investigación y de dónde viene me voló más la mente todavía. O sea, es como que wow, o sea, la riqueza lingüística, ¿verdad? Del latín y todo, tú sabes, por si acaso. Te digo, me lo disfruté mucho, de verdad, lo sigo insistiendo. Y mano, tener piquita yo creo que era otra cosa, y quizá, y también es como dice tu propia abuela, ¿verdad? La autora. Hay frases que nosotros creemos que significan una cosa, pero es que porque en mi casa significan una cosa, pero el significado real es otro. O sea, para mí tener una piquita era como tener un guiso por el lado, como que tener una fuente de dinero extra y no tener envidia, o sea, ni resentimiento. Claro, tiene que ver con estar picado en versión en España, ¿verdad? Estar picado en España es estar molesto. O sea, tener piquita es tener como que, ¿verdad? Riña, tener.
Ujú.
Y eso no lo sabía. Yo creo que tener piquita era como que tener un guiso por el lado. Y de hecho, guisar es to stew. O sea, guisar es to cook things with a sauce. You make a sauce, and on top of the sauce, you cook something. Y estás, y estás en la academia, así que sí, guisar es to stew, to cook a stew. También guisar en Puerto Rico es también to have extra
A
money,
gig. Ujú.
to have a gig, sí. Eh, Ser algún Billy, me encanta. Mira, te iba a decir que hay traducción para Kenepa, es Kinep, Kinep, ¿ok? Porque la palabra Kenepa es de origen indígena, ¿verdad? Es arahuaco, lo que aquí mal llamamos taíno, pero esa es otra conversación que no quiero meterme por ese rabbit hole, ¿verdad? Porque es larguísima. Pero sí, como la Kenepa se da en todo el Caribe, pues el English Speaking Caribbean también le puso nombre y irónicamente lo monta sobre la raíz arahuaca que es o Guinep con G, G-I-N-E-P o Kinep con K-I-N-E-P. Así que la puedes usar como, o sea, dejar Kinepa en español también era una opción, relax, o sea, there's nothing wrong with that, pero te estaba dando la opción. Eh, eh, it's a steal, ¿verdad? Ser un robot, it's a steal. Lo puedes decir también cuando algo es bien fácil de hacer, ¿verdad? Sigo por aquí bajando. Ok, nada, yo creo, nada, ya acabé, mira, ya. Eso son sugerencias, como repito, son sugerencias porque, como tú bien dices, y ser injusto, ¿verdad? El estudio lingüístico lo hizo la autora y eso no te corresponde a ti, ¿verdad? Reproducir, aunque yo te exhortaría, ojo, o sea, y ya estas son mis palabras finales. Y aquí te voy a explicar porque me meto en problema. En el programa, el doctor Marshall Morris, que en paz descanse, que fue uno de los fundadores del PGT en los 70, él en los 90 había abordado un proyecto de precisamente tratar de publicar glosarios de modismos y refranes puertorriqueños y él llegó a elaborar dos, uno a base de animales, de las frases montadas sobre animales, que se llama Vivito y Coleando, ¿verdad? Y el otro es montado en comida, en alimentos, de aquí saqué lo de Kenepa, o sea, por ejemplo. Y por lo tanto, ya ese proyecto nunca se publicó, no voy a explicar por qué, porque es otra defensa de tesis, si me pongo a explicar por qué. Pero antes de que el PGT cerrara, me los llevé para casa y los estoy digitalizando. Porque iban a coger hongo, ¿ok? Y esto es papel. Y si coge hongo, esto no está publicado, esto no tiene versión digital. Pues esto es lo que hay. Y yo creo que ahora aquí hablando así, y quizás no es el momento para hacerlo, pero yo estoy dispuesto, por lo menos yo en persona, quizás con alguien del programa de lingüística en inglés, y quizás con el trabajo de tu abuela, con el trabajo del doctor Morris, empezar, o sea, mirarlo, ver cómo los aunamos, y empezar a hacer publicaciones de este tipo, pues ya en colaboración. Después buscamos editorial, eso ya, eso pues ya, pero creo que es un trabajo encomiable y de hecho podríamos, ya una vez aprobada tu tesis, podías añadirle una dimensión de hacer sí la verdadera investigación y pues quizás ya buscarle unas definiciones más actualizadas, y yo sé que tú las sabes, porque me lo has demostrado en tu prefacio y en lo que, en cómo lo escribes, y quizás combinarla con las que tenemos acá del doctor Morris. Te lo estoy haciendo aquí en vivo, hablando aquí a lo loco, pero creo que este tipo de trabajo es pertinente, es un tipo de trabajo que también es que sería una colaboración entre el programa de lingüística y nosotros, que ya, yo creo que ya es hora de que empecemos a colaborar entre programas también. Y además que es un tipo de publicación que todo el mundo necesita, pero por la naturaleza de las tesis que hacemos en el programa no se hace. Entonces tú, como te metiste a hacer esto, pues yo creo que aquí the chosen one is here, tú sabes, ¿verdad? Y si te interesa, pues lo podemos discutir después, porque a mí no me gustaría que este trabajo se quede aquí, en una defensa que alguien pueda acceder. Yo creo que este trabajo es publicable. Yo creo que ese trabajo será importante incluso como repositorio de la evolución lingüística de nuestro español y a la misma vez buscar, ahora que la diáspora es tan numerosa, ¿no? Buscarle idioms en inglés para que la diáspora pueda entender. Yo creo que será un trabajo bien bonito, que tú misma, inspirado en tu esfuerzo y en el esfuerzo de tu abuela. Así que eso sería así que te felicito por esto, gracias por dejarnos ver esto, ¿verdad? Y te lo dejo ahí. Yo sé que I know it's a lot to unpack, pero, pero de verdad que por favor no lo dejes morir. Estamos ¿sabes? En tiempos tumultuosos, que esperan que las aguas bajen, pero una vez todo baje, ¿verdad? Y pase el verano, no te pierdas, porque yo creo que esto le podemos dar más vida e incluso enriquecerlo con el trabajo de otros colegas que también están haciendo lo mismo y que, por ejemplo, yo llevo peleando desde que soy estudiante en el programa de Porque Rayo no hemos publicado el trabajo de Marshall Morris, ¿verdad? Que está ahí y se quedó en papel, ¿verdad? Así que yo creo que con el tuyo se puede enriquecer. Nah, son mis palabras, ya terminé. Sí.
I think Robert or Alejandro or Marirosa, would you like to add anything before we continue on?
Can I add something that I found?
Yeah.
Very short, es una confusión. I'm referring to Marirosa's text. Okay, page 22. Donde hay una lista de nombres: Jacinto Rivera, Carlos Alvarado, Diego Santini, Didia Olivieri. Okay, let me read from the original and then go to because there's something that I didn't quite get. And I quote, let's see. Luego de eliminar los que no eran propiamente puertorriqueños, procedimos a entrevistar dos personas de diferente edad, residentes en el norte, etc. Entonces, I go to the English and it says, I interviewed people, it doesn't say how many people, of different ages living in the north, south, east, and west of the island to see if these idioms were. So here in the text, you said two people of different, como que, and then in the list, there are 10 different people.
Yeah. I might have to check because the scanned version of the source text was very blurry. And so, and I could only visit the library a couple times to consult in person. There were some words that I had to go to check, including cría, the one that we mentioned earlier. For the longest time, I thought it said oría, because in the scan version it looks like an
Hmm.
O because it was so blurry. And when I went in person, it says cría. So because that's why I also transcribed it. So I might have to check the source
Mm.
to see if I transcribed it wrong.
But that was just checking. I'm gonna second the words of Professor Álvarez. Please don't let this die. Please don't let que esto no vaya a dormir el sueño de los justos, like we say. Please, this is important. This is important to Puerto Rican, la variante del español boricua, antillano. It's important to Puerto Rican culture. Y habla tan y tan bien de nosotros. And it just shows that the Puerto Rican dialect is just as important as the Colombian, the Nicaraguan, the Argentinian. No, aquí no hay inferioridad de ninguna índole. Así es que, felicitaciones.
All right.
De acuerdo. Una última cosita, una última. Sí, cuando hablamos de jaibería, yo no I wouldn't call it ingenuity. It's better than ingenuity. It's more like cunning. It's more like cleverness. It's more like audacity. It has to do with smarts. It's much more than ingenious. El jíbaro te dice y después hace lo que le da la gana. O sea, it's a sort of social wisdom that comes from cunning and cleverness and not necessarily a formation or education. They're smart because they're cunning. Y es una observación que tengo, ¿verdad? Porque, por eso es que Jaime tiene connotaciones tanto positivas como negativas, porque es buena en el sentido de que el pobre se defiende, pero es mala para que está en el poder porque precisamente no se deja, it's cunning, no se deja, ¿verdad? Oprimir ni en ese sentido. Pero es una palabra absolutamente difícil de traducir. Yo no traduciría jaibería, o sea, I would never translate that word. I will leave it in Spanish. Yeah. Así que sé que es un tough cookie también para traducir, sí.
Yeah, but that's also why I decided to leave it in Spanish anyway.
Sí, no, y yo sé que ingenuidad es lo que dice el texto fuente, o sea, que tú estás traduciendo, o sea, que me consta que no es tu opinión, sino pero que yo discrepo ahí en ingenuidad. La ingenuidad sí tiene que ver es más con creatividad, ¿verdad? Y no, esto es más con astucia, con estas sabidurías que no se enseñan, que la persona es como que being foxy, ¿verdad? Fox smart, eso es el AIBA, en ese sentido.
I mean, 70 years of linguistic evolution, things are Okay, so Bárbara, we are ready to okay. So we're live, right? Welcome back, everyone. So the committee has decided along with me, and without further ado, we're not gonna beat around the bush. I need more idioms for this. What else? The committee has decided, Marirosa, that you have a passing grade, obviously. So congratulations, and we're with the quality and the distinction of sobresaliente, Marirosa. So sobresaliente, obviously, we hope that this work continues on. I don't know about your plans about grad studies, etc., but you don't need to go to another grad study to continue this. You can continue this as your own, as a person, as a translator, as a linguist, as a etc. You can continue it, and if you need any of our helps continuing with this, Alejandro, is just a call away. Robert is also just a call away. I am just a text away. We are more than welcome and more than happy to help you with whatever we can. So congratulations, Marirosa.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. Oh my gosh.
Go celebrate is what's in store right now.
Yes.
And then the committee will be sending you, if they haven't sent you already, their notes. And then Bárbara already mentioned you have until the 20-something to have that.
Israel.
What was that? Okay, sorry, someone had their microphone. So you, but for today, Marirosa, just focus on celebrate. If those of you who are watching outside, I don't know if Joshua is out there, I don't know if Michelle
Yes.
is watching. Go eat, go have fun, and then get to finishing this. All right?
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Congratulations, Marirosa.
Thank you.
All right. So
Bye.
thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.